The Outer Worlds 2 is a game that in many ways is similar to Obsidian's last RPG that came out earlier this year, Avowed. It's got a similar feeling open world, solid gameplay, and a pretty engaging story. Now, I've made 2 videos on Avowed by now, and in both of those videos, I said that Avowed disappointed me. And so, naturally, you would assume that The Outer Worlds 2, being so similar to Avowed, also disappointed me, right? Well, not exactly. In fact, I would go ahead and say that this is one of the better games I've played in the past couple of years. The world is similar, yes, but it's more fun to explore and has much more varied and vast locations. The gameplay is first-person combat, yes, but it's much more fun, and the progression is wildly better here. And the story is still good and has meaningful choices, yes, but the decision making, morally gray decisions, and reactionary ripples that each dialogue encounter has is amped up tenfold here. So yes, Outer Worlds 2 is similar in a lot of ways to Avowed. The core of a first-person action RPG set on multiple semi-open worlds is still present here in the Outer Worlds 2. But every single aspect of what makes a game is much more refined, more fun, and downright better in almost every way. So let's talk about The Outer Worlds 2, what it does right, what could be improved, and why The Outer Worlds 2 is way better than you think. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button and please consider subscribing to see more content like this. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We are less than 100 subscribers away. Clicking that subscribe button really helps me out if y'all enjoy videos like this. Now, back to the video. First up, I want to talk about this game's world. Now, Outer Worlds 2 is set in the galaxy of Arcadia, a retro, futuristic, distant galaxy with 4 major planets to explore: Eden, Dorado, Cloister, and Praetor. There are also 2 more space stations to explore as well, but they're smaller than the main planets. Each of these planets provides a unique feel and overall are very distinct, and I really like that. Much like Avowed, each of these planets is basically set in a different biome. Eden is the paradise island with lush green grass and exotic colors. Cloister is an ice world with constant blizzards and snow. Dorado is rocky and deserty, and Praetor is hellish with lightning constantly going off. Each of these planets have unique layouts and unique challenges when it comes to exploring them, and I would overall say I'm mostly pleased with the world design. Like Avowed, the exploration on each of these worlds is very solid. There's a fog of war system on the main map, so you need to explore every little bit to get rid of it. Each of the points of interest on the world are all handcrafted, and no 2 POIs look or play the same. And not every points of interest is even used in the main and side quests of the game, providing that extra bit of incentive to explore every last bit of each of these worlds. Going off the beaten path to some of the points of interest not used by the quests in this game always rewards you with some sick loot, and it just makes exploring these worlds that much more fun. Also, in general, I would say I really enjoy the Outer Worlds 2's color palette and graphics. They're definitely a bit cartoony, similar to those of Avowed's, but I can't really imagine a scenario where a more realistic color palette and textures would help this game's focus on satire. The overall more cartoony vibe definitely helps the game's satire and ensures that a relatively lighthearted tone is kept throughout the game. But look, while I think these worlds are a noticeable step up from the ones in Avowed, I still do think they are a noticeable step down from other modern RPGs. The Outer Worlds 2's worlds, and more importantly cities and towns, still suffer from a lot of what I didn't like from Avowed. The worlds feel a little bit lifeless. Between the points of interest, there's honestly a whole lot of nothing. You'll never really see an NPC walk by or run into any random encounters. This means when you're traveling to points of interest, you're just going to be doing a whole lot of running. That's it. The cities suffer from a lot of the same downsides as the cities in Avowed. Now, there are more of these cities, and the layouts of each of these cities and towns are noticeably better than the ones in Avowed, but they still suffer from that same bit of lifelessness as the ones in Avowed did. NPCs stand in one place, they don't really move around, all of the cities are also painfully small. It was a little disappointing when the first city you reach at the beginning of the game is Fairfield, and it's just a somewhat western looking town with one main road and like 2 NPCs that you can interact with to get side quests from. It just felt like that being in that grand reveal of that first city in the game was a bit disappointing and overall didn't get me excited to discover the rest of the cities and towns. Ideally, the first impression that the game wants to make is that with a grandiose city that is full of wonder and discovery. For all of its faults, I think New Atlantis from Starfield accomplished that decently well. Fairfield just did not give me that sense of wonder and discovery at all. I was especially disappointed with Matriarch's Mercy and Laplace Garden. The former is just a collection of refugees in shacks, not very big at all, and while I appreciate the unique layout and the densely packed NPCs, conveniently, half the city was blocked off due to some unforeseen circumstance, making the playable space of the city extremely small. The latter is supposed to be the mecca of the Order of the Ascendant faction, a faction focused on the innovative wonders of science and math, and yet it was one of the smallest cities in the game and had one of the more basic layouts. The city I would say that actually impressed me the most was the ACS Undisputed Claim. This is the central hub for the Anti's Choice faction and was actually the largest hub in the game. I think the vibe in this hub was overall great. I loved the neon look and the capitalistic undertones wherever you looked. And I also felt that this hub had the most unique layout. It reminded me a lot of Neon from Starfield, but shifted to match the vibe of The Outer Worlds 2. So yeah, in case you can't tell, the world aspect to me was the most disappointing part of the game. Is it bad? Absolutely not. And it is a noticeable step up from Avowed cities and towns due to the more unique layouts and more densely packed NPCs. But they still lag behind other modern games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and The Witcher 3. I mean, The Witcher 3 at this point is 10 years old, and it still features one of the best in-game cities I've ever seen in a game. Novigrad is not the whole game. It's only one of the 3 main regions of the map, and yet it is massive, and it's brimming with things to explore, and it felt alive with NPCs walking around, random encounters, and the bustling nature of it all. KCD 2, which came out this year, has an absolute gargantuan map, and still features a massive city that only takes up about a fourth of one of its 2 playable regions. Kuttenberg, like Novigrad, is brimming with things to find, explore, and NPCs. I know the scope of those games is much larger than that of The Outer Worlds 2, but I don't think it's crazy to ask for some more immersive cities that are at least on par with something that was made a decade ago. However, I will commend Obsidian for improving on the cities of Avowed, which also came out just this year. To see that kind of improvement from one developer in the same calendar year is impressive. Overall, I will say that I had a better time in the worlds of The Outer Worlds 2 than those of Avowed. They're more unique, better laid out, and also provide more reason to go out and explore the surrounding areas. But they still aren't where I would want them to be, and I will say that I think I enjoyed the planets in this game more because of the fact that I'm kinda a sucker for space. So, because of this potential bias, I will say while I overall enjoyed this world, your enjoyment may vary based on what you like in your game's worlds. Moving on, let's talk about the gameplay. Now, while I think that the worlds are a mild step up from those of Avowed, I think the gameplay is a noticeable step up and much better than the gameplay of Avowed. Obviously, The Outer Worlds 2 is a first-person shooter, and the gunplay is tight, responsive, and damn fun. One of the most annoying things that I mentioned about Avowed in my review was that I felt like once I had found one weapon I really liked, the need for going out and finding more weapons was completely eliminated. Upgrading the weapon I already had was the best way to progress forward. This issue is completely eliminated in The Outer Worlds 2. Now, weapon damage scales with your level no matter what. You don't have to worry about finding precious resources to then upgrade your weapons to make sure they're still viable in a fight during higher level combat. Compound this with the fact that there are tons of different types of weapons to use, different unique weapons, and some super fucking cool science weapons. Constantly swapping out your arsenal for weapons you find out in the wild is just so fun. Every time I thought I had a good layout and I was happy with the guns I had, I would explore a new area and the game would drop me an absolute banger of a new weapon. Because of this, I was forced to throw it into my loadout to see if I would like it and if it worked in my playstyle. And hey, if it didn't work, no harm no foul, since the weapon I already had was scaling with my levels. I could go back to it and it would be just as viable. I think part of the reason the game encourages you to experiment so much is because of the fact that the progression is no longer tied to what type of warrior you want to be. In Avowed, your whole goal was to gain skill points and build out if you wanted to become a mage, a ranger, a warrior, etc. In Outer Worlds 2, you only put skill points into gun or melee, which means no matter what type of gun it is or what type of melee weapon you have, they all feature the same buffs from how you built out your character. Outside of the combat, I think the build crafting and progression in this game is extremely well done as well. Your weapon, armor, helmet, and hell, even your health packs have modification slots you can put mods into. These give you buffs like giving you an extra weapon slot or extra elemental damage, things of that nature. The unique or legendary weapons give you a unique mod in one of the slots of the weapon, making them tangibly different than any of the common or uncommon weapons you find out in the world. A lot of times, the weapons themselves are the same. For example, you can have a legendary assault rifle and an uncommon assault rifle. They look the same, but the legendary has the cool and unique mod attachment that makes it play different from the uncommon assault rifle. Customizing your weapons and armor with this mod system is extremely unique, and I engaged with it throughout my playthrough quite a bit. Mods aren't the only thing you can craft though. Each of your companions also have mod packs for them, which give them new abilities or buff the ones they already have. These mod packs are found by doing the companion quests for each of the companions, and they provide a way for you to build out your companions in ways that help your playstyle. For example, I used Inez as a very powerful healer. Since using stim packs in this game cause poisoning, kind of like radiation in the Fallout games, you have to rely on other means to heal yourself during combat. Inez had the option to become a really powerful healer during combat based on what you selected in her mod kits and how you built her out. Inez saved my ass multiple times throughout her healing abilities, and I'm glad I was able to build her out in such a way that tangibly helped me out. The progression in this game is also pretty solid, but not perfect. Like a typical RPG, every time you level up, you get 2 skill points to spend on attributes like guns, stealth, speech, engineering, and more. Every 2 levels, you get an ability point, which you can then use to buy a new ability for your character. These abilities are gated by your level in each of the skills though, so you will get better and more powerful abilities in the attributes you put the most points into. Off the bat, Outer Worlds 2 is way too stingy with skill points. The max level is 30, which means you get a total of 60 skill points to spend. You pick 3 starting attributes to start with, and then can put points into other attributes as you see fit. The problem is, if you try and diversify too much, you're going to be stuck being not too good at anything. The arbitrary skill checks that are littered throughout the game always use one of the attributes as the skill check. The problem is, if you decide you want to complete one of those skill checks later in the game, and you put points into a skill that you hadn't originally started out with, you are hampering yourself from the hundreds of other skill checks. I get why Obsidian did this. They want players to specialize in 3 or 4 skills each playthrough and incentivize subsequent playthroughs if you want to see everything the game has to offer. But when you don't have a respec system in the game, you can end up completely fucking over a player by not letting them know early on that the level cap is 30, and you'll be severely hindering yourself if you don't specialize now. Since I got the game 5 days early with the deluxe edition, I didn't have the ability to go online and find tips and tricks on how to spend my skill points. So because of this, I ended up way too diversified and never really got that good at any one attribute. It wasn't until halfway through the game I realized I needed to specialize if I wanted to pass the skill checks of my chosen 3 starting attributes, and by then, it was too late to get them to a high enough level for endgame checks. I'm typically a guy that doesn't like to specialize and be a jack of all trades, but the Outer Worlds 2 actively discourage this type of play, which is a bit frustrating. The last aspect of the gameplay I want to talk about is the flaw system. Now, without a doubt, this is one of the coolest and one of the most unique systems ever put into an RPG, and I fucking love it. Basically, the game tracks how you play and then serves you flaws based on the things that you do in the game. These flaws will give you a buff in certain aspects that the game thought you did a lot, while giving you drawbacks in others. For example, I got the overprepared flaw. This flaw basically said that I was always reloading before the actual magazine ran out, and so the buff was that I got a larger magazine size for every single one of my weapons, but the downside was that if I ran out of ammo in a clip, I would get a damage penalty for 8 seconds. The flaws are phenomenal because they give you buffs in areas of the game you actually participate in and force you to change how you play just a little. Now, some flaws are definitely more intense than others, but I found myself taking flaws here and there because I felt as though the benefit outweighed the bad. Overall, man, I was extremely impressed with the gameplay. The gunplay is tight, the looting is fun, the progression is solid, and the flaw system is amazing. I'm super impressed with all the updates and changes Obsidian made from Avowed to make the Outer Worlds 2 an absolute treat to play through from start to finish. The last aspect of this game that I want to talk about is the story. Now, without a doubt, this is the strongest aspect of the game for me. The player choice and reactivity in this game reminds me a lot of games like KCD2 and Fallout New Vegas. Starting from the beginning though, the premise is that you're basically an Earth Directorate agent sent to the galaxy of Arcadia to investigate a dictatorship known as the Protectorate that has ravaged through the system. On top of that, various dangerous rifts have been opening up around the galaxy. These rifts destroy everything around them and could soon swallow up the entire galaxy. Your job is to figure out what the Protectorate has to do with it and how to stop these rifts. Naturally, shit goes awry and you spend the rest of the game working with the various other factions in the game to take down the Protectorate and fix the rifts. Off the bat, this story itself, while simple enough, can get incredibly complex based on which factions you choose to seek aid from and how you play each side. The game gives you incredible freedom on how you want to approach any one objective and whose help you want to take. You can go in as a Lone Ranger and make everything more difficult for yourself, or you can enlist the aid of Auntie's Choice or the Order to meet your goals. Both of these two main factions in the game are incredibly morally gray. Both have their obvious upsides and obvious downsides, and picking and choosing one way or the other never really feels like you're always doing the right thing. It definitely feeds into the self-preservation theme that's constantly present throughout the game. Are you going to play through the game as an Auntie's Choice apologist, an Order mathematician, or a renegade ranger only focused on their end goals? Or are you going to play every side and try and get an equitable outcome for every faction involved? These types of decisions and quest reactivity was incredibly cool to see and reminded me heavily of games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Other than Auntie's Choice and the Order, there are 2 more neutral factions in the game that I think are painfully underutilized. Sub Rosa are essentially contractors. It doesn't matter what the job is and for which faction, as long as the money is good, they'll do whatever. I wish we could have used this faction more as a means to our goals without having to directly engage with Auntie's Choice or the Order. They remind me a lot of Ryujin Industries faction from Starfield, and I wish we could have done more subterfuge for them to achieve our goals. The other faction is the Glorious Dawn, a cult that's hyper fixated on the idea that the rifts need to be worshipped instead of destroyed. That's kind of it for this faction, and they're really only touched upon during one of the companion quests. Speaking of the companions, let's talk about them. I think that the companions are fine. None of them really stand out, and none of the companion quests are that interesting or particularly good. You have a total of 5 companions, one from each of the factions in the game. I enjoy the fact that each of them have a different outlook on the world around them and will comment, get mad at, or agree with the various decisions and alliances you make throughout the game. I enjoy hearing Tristan, the Protectorate companion, voice his concern for Inez, the Auntie's Choice companion, due to the fact that their factions are at war with each other. Those types of interactions always added immersion into the world in ways I really enjoyed. But their companion quests themselves are kinda mid. A few of them start interesting, like Tristan's and Azza's, but ultimately are very short and don't really go anywhere interesting, which is a bit of a disappointment. Overall though, I am incredibly impressed with the immersion and depth that the story had. Even though the companions weren't too interesting, the other NPCs around them were, and I felt as though each of the factions definitively had their own voice and how they approach the world around them. Balancing every faction, which ones you want to succeed and which ones you didn't care for, and ultimately using them to get to your end goal was a super fun political balancing act that I could see being just as interesting in subsequent playthroughs. Look, if I hadn't made it clear already throughout the duration of this review, let me make it clear right now. The Outer Worlds 2 is not just good, it's great. It's a noticeable step up from Avowed in almost every way, and this was genuinely some of the most fun I've had in gaming in a while. I loved the first Outer Worlds, and I always say that The Outer Worlds 1 was the first RPG I ever played, and it made me fall in love with the genre. So, I have a special place in my heart for this franchise and for Obsidian. I think Obsidian hit on all fronts for The Outer Worlds 2 and genuinely made a game that I think people will talk about for years to come. Fallout New Vegas at launch was reviewed very similarly to The Outer Worlds 2. People thought it was good, but nothing crazy. But as time went on and the years started to pile, the game aged more and more like fine wine. I think The Outer Worlds 2 is Obsidian firing on all cylinders, and I'm excited to see what they've got planned next. Either way, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down below your thoughts on The Outer Worlds 2. I know the marketing for this game was a bit of a debacle, pricing this game at $80 and then due to backlash, dropping it back down to $70, and all this bullshit that has accompanied all that has really tainted the perception of this game without even a lot of people playing it. So I'm curious to see what you guys think of The Outer Worlds 2 down below. Again, if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button and please consider subscribing to see more content like this. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We are so close. So clicking that subscribe button would really help me out. But yeah, guys, either way, it's been CGG. I'm out.